The last 10 years has made an amazing amount of information available via archives, not just within the doors of libraries with vast amount of printed books and magazines and microfiche, but due to the internet that is available in most libraries throughout America. I know in Austin, Texas, every library has not only internet available, but also wireless. So for those who have portable computers such as notebooks/laptops, you can access for free the World Wide Web. The internet is a neutral medium. It's just the information that's out there. I'll be the first to admit not everything, even regarding these subjects, that I find is true or worthy even of discussion for that matter. However, what I have put together that's available for your own investigation, I think will be substantial enough to help persuade you that there is a bigger plan than just constructing better roads or having food safety through the microchipping of not only all livestock, but eventually you and me. So what I want you to do is don't buy into the propaganda, the paradigm that people will throw at you. Well, you can't believe everything that's on the internet. Well, of course not. That goes without mentioning. It's no different than you can't believe everything that you hear on your nightly news or read in your daily newspaper. Information is information that needs to be dissected. You need to have discernment in how to do that, and go look for other reports on the same subject to see if there's conflicts, if there's unanimous, which is almost never the case. So you be wise in what you hear on your radio, via your television, and don't succumb to the attitude, the apathy that people have about, well, that's just, internet stuff. Most of it is just archives from news stations that we piece together, and you get the bigger picture.
Talked about a little bit tonight. As you know, it is going to encompass hundreds of thousands of acres all across Texas. Last election, you touted your support for families and property rights. What do you say to the farmers out there who supported you last election, who are now livid that a foreign company and some of your political contributions will benefit at their expense?
Well, first and foremost, you're absolutely correct about...
If you like the Dubai port deal, you'll love my TTC land grab. It turns your property into foreign profits.
Where my heart is, that's where it will always be.
Across Texas are now at risk of losing their homes as Perry hands our Texas infrastructure over to foreign robber barons.
Why are the people of the state of Texas not being given the right to vote on the Trans-Texas Corridor and related tolled highways?
Well, first and foremost, the people of the state of Texas had the opportunity to vote on a substantial amount of that in a constitutional amendment.
The governor, the people have never been allowed to vote on this. It is a $184 billion boondoggle.
We came back in 2003, we came back in 2005, and made changes to the Trans-Texas Corridor language so that the farmers and ranchers would know that...
Governor Perry has ignored dozens of county governments across Texas that have opposed the largest land grab in the history of the U.S.
Land and the process of eminent domain was going to be appropriately handled. So the bottom line is the Texas OU game.
Forcing toll booths on freeways we've already paid for.
TxDOT's budget has increased 117% in 6 years.
The people have not only voted and sent a clear message of how we're going to build infrastructure in the state of Texas.
Repeal the legislation. That was what was voted on, was the legislation that set it up in the first place.
There is no one standing before you today that has more closely ties to the rural areas of the state than myself. I was the agriculture commissioner for 8 years.
Countless hard-working Texans will be displaced for Perry's $500,000-acre eminent domain scheme.
Here's what people understand.
With one quick question.
Yes,
we
ma'am.
talked a little bit about the political contributions. 3 central figures in Sintra have given you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Don't you consider that a conflict of interest?
Not at all, because that is a totally...
A secret contract with a foreign company grabbing over 500,000 acres of Texans' property belongs to Texans, not foreign companies.
And Texas will be better for it.
In the interest
We're
of time...
going to have to leave it right.
Stop 2 Border Patrol agents from going to jail for shooting a Mexican drug smuggler. All of that and a great deal more straight ahead.
This is Lou Dobbs Tonight. News, debate, and opinion for Thursday, December 21st. Live in New York. Sitting in for Lou Dobbs, Kitty Pilgrim.
Good evening, everybody. Received harsh sentences for shooting and wounding a Mexican drug dealer. Several congressmen want President Bush to pardon the 2 men, and the Border Patrol agents are set to begin their jail sentences next month. Casey Wine reports from Santa Ana, California.
In less than a month, former Border Patrol agent Jose Compean is scheduled to begin serving more than a decade in prison. He and fellow agent Ignacio Ramos were convicted of shooting and wounding an illegal alien Mexican drug smuggler near Fabens, Texas last year.
They did what we're supposed to do, what we're sworn to do as officers, and now they're looking at something that is just unbelievable.
The smuggler received immunity from federal prosecutors who threw the book at the agents, claiming they failed to report the shooting and violated the drug smuggler's civil rights. Now there's mounting pressure on the Bush administration to pardon the 2 agents. Scores of lawmakers have joined the cause, including Orange County, California Republican Dana Rohrabacher, who's spearheading efforts to secure a pardon from the president.
He will be defining himself, his own character, if he permits these 2 brave defenders of America to be destroyed and their families to be destroyed. He needs to give them a pardon to prove to us that he himself is a moral man and actually does support those people who defend our country.
On behalf of Agent Ramos and myself, I want to thank everyone for their support. It's been overwhelming, especially when you consider what we went through at the beginning, where we were basically alone. We didn't have anyone.
The activist group Grassfire presented more than 150,000 petitions demanding a pardon for the agents. Grassfire also says the White House, Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, and others have been flooded with 15,000 faxes.
Our president needs to act, our Congress needs to act, and the U.S. attorney that prosecuted this needs to be investigated.
Compean, meanwhile, is only weeks away from beginning his 12-year sentence and separation from his wife and 3 children. During today's rally, Congressman Rohrabacher's office received a lengthy response from the White House. Among its claims, the White House says while the sentences of the 2 agents may seem harsh, the agents in the White House's view used excessive force, and the White House says they received a fair trial. Kitty.
Thanks very much, Casey Wine. Well, that brings us to the subject of tonight's poll. We'd like to know what you think. Do you think President Bush should pardon Border Patrol agents Ignacio Ramos and Jose Compean? Yes or no? Cast your vote at loudobbs.com. We'll bring the results a little bit later in the broadcast. His new president is already meddling in U.S. affairs. President Felipe Calderón promises to defend the rights of illegal aliens in the United States. On a visit to Nogales, just across the border from Arizona, Calderón greeted Mexicans returning for the holidays, and he said that fees paid to Mexican consultants will be used to pay for defending Mexicans' rights in the United States. Calderón also said that his administration will focus on creating jobs that will keep Mexicans in Mexico. Coming up, outrage over refuses to pardon 2 Border Patrol agents. Ignacio Ramos and Jose Compean are about to start serving lengthy prison terms for shooting an illegal alien drug smuggler. Casey Wine reports.
It's another setback for former Border Patrol agents Ignacio Ramos and Jose Compean. They're seeking a presidential pardon for their convictions in the shooting and wounding of a Mexican drug smuggler in Texas last year. They were sentenced to 11 and 12 years in prison for failing to report the shooting. Supporters say except for that, the agents were merely trying to do their jobs, protecting one of the most dangerous sections of the U.S.-Mexico border. While the White House has failed to take action in the case, the president this week did see fit to pardon 16 criminals, including 5 drug dealers.
There's a palpable sense of outrage and betrayal. Here you have 5 convicted drug dealers being pardoned and 2 Border Patrol agents who were doing their job fighting the war on drugs on the front lines, and they're going to prison, and the president just sits back and allows that to happen.
During his first 6 years in office, President Bush has pardoned 113 criminals, from moonshiners to tax cheats, and commuted the sentences of 3 others. President Clinton granted 4 times as many during his 8 years in office. The only post-war president granting fewer pardons than President Bush was his father. Even so, supporters of Ramos and Compeán say their case deserves special attention. 160,000 U.S. citizens and 55 members of Congress have signed petitions requesting a presidential pardon.
What the president's doing is putting in jeopardy the good relationship he's had with people like myself who supported his policies, because now we have a doubt as to what his motives are if he is going to pardon drug dealers and other criminals, but ignore the pleas for a pardon for 2 of the people who have been protecting us at the border.
One day before Thursday's rally supporting the agents, Rohrabacher and other lawmakers received a letter from an acting assistant attorney general saying the agents used excessive force and received a fair trial. A separate letter stonewalled the request for a pardon, recommending the agents contact the same Justice Department that aggressively prosecuted their cases. But Ramos and Compeán are running out of time. They're scheduled to report to prison January 17th. Family members and supporters say their best hope remains with the El Paso judge who handed down the agents' convictions. She could allow them to remain free on bail while their convictions are appealed. Casey Wyan, CNN, Los Angeles.
You've placed 1,500 National Guard troops on the border. You've given millions of dollars to local law enforcement. Yet the flow of illegal immigrants continues. If the federal government does not act, will you keep those troops, who really are designed to deal with disasters, there indefinitely for years?
Wayne, I'm going to ask the Texas legislature for $100 million this next session of the legislature to address the border security issue. We have been way out front of this issue from months ago, actually almost a year ago. Washington understands that you cannot have national security, you cannot have an immigration program until you have border security.
Given harsh prison sentences for shooting a Mexican drug smuggler. Federal prosecutors who gave that drug smuggler immunity for their testimony are strongly defending their handling of the controversial case. That special report and a great deal more straight ahead here tonight.
This is Lou Dobbs Tonight. News, debate, and opinion for Friday, October 20th. Live in New York, Lou Dobbs.
To prosecute 2 Border Patrol agents who were sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for shooting a drug smuggler that was given immunity by the prosecutors. And illegal aliens tonight receiving another helping hand from the ACLU. Casey Wyan reports on federal prosecutors who now claim they had no choice but to offer a drug smuggler immunity and no choice but to prosecute 2 U.S. Border Patrol agents. We'll find out. And Bill Tucker tonight reports on the ACLU's latest effort to undermine the efforts of local governments trying to deal with the illegal immigration crisis. We begin tonight with Casey Wyan in Los Angeles. Casey?
Lou, federal prosecutors are finally talking about their case against 2 Border Patrol agents who shot a Mexican drug smuggler. As you mentioned, prosecutors said they had no choice to offer that drug smuggler immunity from prosecution, but throw the book at the agents. Hours after the sentencing of former Border Patrol agents Ignacio Ramos and Jose Compeán to 11 and 12-year prison terms, respectively, federal prosecutors defended their controversial case. U.S. Attorney Johnny Sutton also complained about critics of his department's prosecution of the agents while granting immunity to the man they're convicted of shooting in the buttocks, admitted drug smuggler Oscar Aldrete Davila.
Some in the media have suggested that Agent Compeán and Agent Ramos should get medals for shooting this drug suspect. I disagree. I think that this jury did exactly the right thing by holding these 2 agents accountable for what they did. The United States of America is a country where the rule of law applies. It applies to all citizens. It applies to police officers.
but apparently not to drug smugglers. Sutton claims investigators had no case against Aldrete Davila, even though there's no dispute he was driving this van loaded with 743 pounds of marijuana, ignored agents' repeated orders to stop, scuffled with Agent Compean, and fled back across the border. Sutton says there was no case because no fingerprints were found in the van, and agents couldn't identify Aldrete Davila.
I feel no sympathy for this alien. I feel that he deserves to be in prison. If we ever find him again smuggling drugs into this country, we will happily put him there.
Sutton says he had no evidence to substantiate reports Aldrete Davila was caught smuggling drugs into the United States a second time after his confrontation with agents Ramos and Compean. An El Paso Homeland Security official read this statement from DHS Inspector General Richard Skinner.
These two agents have betrayed the trust placed in them by the Department of Homeland Security, their fellow agents, and the public. I again commend the United States Attorney's Office for their successful prosecution of this important case.
Prosecutors say the 11 and 12-year sentences are just, but when asked why the agents were originally offered plea bargains of 1-year prison sentences, Sutton would not answer. The convictions will be appealed, while Ramos and Compean for now remain free on bail. That appeal is expected to focus on a decision by Judge Kathleen Cardone to dismiss a motion for a new trial based on new information from 3 jurors who now say they were coerced to vote guilty. Meanwhile, family members and others involved in the defense side of the case say the best hope for the agents right now might be a presidential pardon, Lou.
A presidential pardon. The idea, that becomes somewhat problematic given the relationship between President Bush and President Fox. And the suspicion in many quarters and critics of this case that this prosecution was carried out primarily to satisfy the interests of the Mexican government. What do you think?
Well, defense attorneys say they can't figure out why the government was so insistent on prosecuting this case, you know, raising the question of offering these agents 1 year in prison as a plea bargain and then, you know, going completely the other side. There sure is a lot of speculation about pressure from the Mexican government, though we have not seen any direct evidence
Absolutely.
of it.
And there is also considerable speculation down there on the border in El Paso that the drug cartels in Mexico hold immense influence on the northern side of the border and also playing a role in some of the political decisions that are being made there. We're going to be investigating that as well on this broadcast for some time to come. It's going to take a while, but we're going to continue along both of those lines. I'm interested in something that the U.S. Attorney, Casey, said about the rule of law applying. Did anyone ask the U.S. Attorney why the federal government then is not enforcing U.S. immigration law? And I was interested to see a DHS official there. Did anyone ask him to explain why this government is not securing our southern border with Mexico? And thirdly, what then makes this case against 2 U.S. Border Patrol agents who've served with distinctions so important?
Well, to take your last question first, they say it's important because police officers, federal agents, anyone who has the authority to shoot someone under the color of law has a higher responsibility to obey the letter of that law. They pointed to what they call the cover-up in this case, and they say that that's why this case needed to be prosecuted the way it was. As to the broader question of border security, that didn't come up, but the Homeland Security Department official and Johnny Sutton both said that they are proud of Border Patrol agents who put their lives on the line every day to defend this nation. Yet they said they had no choice but to prosecute these 2.
Did they explain why they had no choice but to give this drug smuggler immunity in order to carry out the prosecution? Because the reason I ask that is I'm sure that U.S. Attorney Johnny Sutton knows that the top 3 revenue sources for a corrupt and incompetent government in Mexico are oil revenues, remittances primarily from illegal aliens in this country, and tens of billions of dollars in drug money that flow across that border.
Now, the only thing they said about the decision to offer him immunity and to not prosecute him was they didn't have enough evidence to make a case against the smuggler, and they said his testimony was critical to convicting these two agents. It sure seems to me that they put that interest before the interest of enforcing the law against a drug smuggler, Luke.
And this question is going to be followed, of course, by congressional investigators, at least 24 congressmen saying that they are going to proceed with an investigation of this case, a case that many are calling an outright travesty of American justice. We thank you very much, and that goes to the subject of our poll. Casey Wine, thank you. Do you believe the prosecution of U.S. Border Patrol agents Ramos and Campion to more than 10 years in federal prison is a travesty of American justice? We'd like to know what you think. Yes or no? Cast your vote, please, at LouDobbs.com. The results coming up here later. Next,